Hi there, all you thousands and thousands of trig students. Today's lecture is on solving trig equations. And before we get into that, I thought I would just let you know that today is June 4th, 2013, and it is a spectacularly beautiful day. And I thought I would share with you the view from outside the back door of my house. Isn't that just gorgeous? It's about 72 degrees, bright sun, and I just came in from a round of golf. Okay, enough fun and games. Let's get to work. So I guess the first thing you should know about solving trig equations is that there is no one way to solve these. Like identities, there are often several different ways to approach it. And about identities, it turns out that usually they are very important in trying to solve trig equations. So there's not really a lot of theory to go in here. I'll just show you a couple of examples, and I'm sure that for your homework you'll have lots and lots of practice and you'll get the hang of it. There are two kind of basic ways of solving trig equations. One of them is by solving by hand. So let's look at a very simple example for this. Suppose we're looking at 2 sine squared of x plus sine of x equals 1. And what I'd like you to observe is that actually this is sort of like a quadratic equation in sine of x. And one of the things that you know is that the best way to solve a quadratic equation is by factoring, if we can. And just one more point, we're going to solve for values of x in the interval 0 excuse me, to 2 pi. Okay, so just in one rotation of the unit circle. So as you know with quadratic equations, if we're hoping to factor it or use the quadratic formula, the first step is always to get everything on one side. So this would be how we would rewrite it. And then we try to factor it. So that should be a fairly easy factoring form for you. So there's going to be a 1 there, a 1 there, and which is positive and which is negative. Can you figure it out? Okay, so what this means is sine of x is equal to a half, or sine of x is equal to minus 1. Now, in the unit circle, how important is knowing the unit circle? From 0 to 2 pi, where does sine of x equal a half? Got it? Pi over 6 and 5 pi over 6, two places. And also, where in the unit circle does sine of x equal minus 1? Just down at the bottom, so only one place, and that's 3 pi over 2. So here is our solution by hand to the original trig equation. Pretty easy. We didn't even have to use an identity there. Okay, let's look at another. So in this case, we'll look at how we can solve a trig equation by using a calculator, which is, as long as you know how to use the calculator, is a piece of cake. The calculator that students at Northfield Mount Hermon use is a fairly new machine. It's the Inspire CAS, Computer Algebra System. And that really does make a lot of things that we used to do by hand, struggle to do by hand, a piece of cake. Okay, so let's look at an example. And suppose the example that we're trying to solve looks like this. Sine squared of x minus 3 cos of x is equal to 2. Okay, and we could make a substitution for sine squared, 1 minus cos squared, and then everything would be in terms of cos of x, and that's usually a good first step, but that's not going to help us. So we need to use the calculator to help us solve this. So if we wanted to use the calculator to solve this, here's what we would enter into the Inspire CAS. So notice how you enter the syntax. We'd say solve, and we enter the equation, and then it's comma x. That's telling us what we solve for x. But watch what happens. Watch what happens when we execute this command. Wow. So what's going on here? Well, the reality is, I mean, I could have pressed the buttons that are necessary to give me the exact answer. But the idea between this N1 and N2 is that there are infinitely number of solutions that solve the original equation. And remember, what we want to do, although I maybe didn't make it explicit here, is we want to solve for x in the interval 0 to 2 pi. And so luckily there is a way to execute that command on the Inspire, and I'll show you here. So what I want to do is restrict the values of x that I'll get for the solution to values of x between 0 and 2 pi. And here's how that looks on the Inspire. So the key thing to notice here is this extra little bit right here. And what happens here, it's a little hard to see, but immediately after that final parenthesis is a line that goes straight up and down. And we read that as such that. So what this is telling us is solve this equation for x for only values of x between 0 and 2 pi. And when I do that, here's what I get as an answer, and this is the approximate answer. So please notice that when this command is executed, I get exactly two solutions that are between 0 and 2 pi, and here they are. And it should be clear to you that those are irrational numbers and simply rounded off. So that's the beauty of using your calculator to solve trig equations. They make it very, very simple. So you'll need to know how to do both. You'll need to know how to solve them by hand, using identities and factoring and solving different techniques. And you'll also need to know how to use it with your calculator. So I've shown you here how you use it with an Inspire CAS calculator. But depending upon what kind of calculator you have, it could look a lot different. So that's the end of this lecture, and I hope you had a good time. And go out and enjoy the day if you can. Bye-bye.